Hi everyone, and firstly, I want to thank Venkatesh and Boom Life for this opportunity. Today, I'm just going to discuss with you. I'm going to give you a brief presentation actually about my experience as an administrator handling fake news, coming face to face with the larger ramifications of fake news on the ground, what we saw, how we handled it, and then I'll also talk about the latest efforts by the Kerala government, which is the starting of a dedicated anti-fake news division. Right. So with that, I'm going to move to a presentation. All right, so this is the title. Okay, so I'm going to start off with the first time that we came across rumors. This happened sometime in December 2016, where a WhatsApp audio was going around. Now, remember, this is almost 4 years ago. This was just after internet became available at very low costs to all Indians. Jio was launched somewhere around September 2016, and after that, we saw a huge uptick in audio and video based misinformation. So December 2016, there's an audio going around the district of Kannur saying that people from outside have come and they're kidnapping kids. In fact, people are witnessing kids being kidnapped, but it's only due to the intervention made by conscientious citizens that kids were able to be saved. So this had a huge uproar in the district, and it had all of us confused because the moment we heard kidnapping, as an administrator, your first thing is you call the police. And you call the police and ask what the hell is happening in the district. Are the child lifting gangs coming in? And no police station has any information about any child lifting gangs. So there is a lot of misinformation going around, but no one has actually reported anything to the police. So this was the first time we came across anything misinformation causing some level of mass panic. We did not know how to react immediately as well because we felt that since there is actually no kidnapping, that shouldn't be much of a problem. But the panic, the panic effect was obviously there, and this was the first time we issued a clarification. We went online and we issued a clarification. So there were many kidnaps, but actual kidnapped, none. No one could come forward with any sort of information as to which kid was where there was an attempted kidnapping, for instance. So on the Facebook page, as you can see, 12 December 2016, we had given out our first ever, say, post fake news clarification as an administration. So we listed out all of this, and then we told people that, please, if you have any such information, go to the police. What's the point in spreading it to your friends because they're not exactly equipped to handle kidnappers? As a consequence of this, December 2016 itself, this is much before this happened in the rest of India, there were people who were caught, accused of being kidnappers. Some of them were tied to poles, some of them were physically beaten, but nothing major happened because the police was able to intervene. Moving on, this happens like maybe a year later, and this is for me the single most deleterious impact of fake news that I have seen, which goes above individual incidents and sort of covers how fake news can actually damage an entire generation of people. So our children will never have children is basically another rumor that started in the context of the measles rubella vaccination. This is a free vaccination given by the government to all kids from the age of 9 months to 15 years old. All of you know that India has had an amazing track record with vaccination, but this thing started off with rumors, that multiple rumors saying these are substandard products, this is the girl child is going to be adversely affected, etc. And this was extremely frustrating because we had all our equipment with us, and we were going to schools to give the vaccination, but things were not working out there. October 17th, the measles rubella vaccination, or what we like to call it, the Save the Children from Their Parents campaign, because it was the parents who were standing as this Chinese wall, between doctors and their kids. Unbelievable. So we started off by going around and talking to parents. Our target was 5 lakh kids, and we hit the 3 lakh mark, and things just stopped. Beyond 3 lakhs, we were not able to move forward at all. Teachers also were helpless. So we started talking to parents and started reasoning with them, started calling meetings of parents and asking them, do you want your kids to be doctors? And this is what we got. Do you want your child to grow up and be a doctor? And all the parents would say, yes, we do. And then we would ask them, would you listen to doctors on vaccination? The answer would be a resounding no. We don't want to listen to doctors. We'll rather listen to Facebook, WhatsApp, and that sort of thing. And the best part was, as time was going forward, the kind of misinformation was getting more sophisticated. So obviously there was audio misinformation, there was text, We even had a person standing up with a small box or something in his hand going, "This is the vaccine. Do you know that this vaccine actually has to be stored under minus 15 degrees C, and uh, in the whole district there is not a single refrigerator that can hold things at that temperature, so it's all useless anyway. They're going to inject viruses into your kids." So it went to that level of sophistication. So finally, at the end of that campaign, we had around 200,000 points for WhatsApp, and doctors drew a big zero. So you can see these are this is the campaign information. So this is 1 year after the kidnapping thing. This is November 2017. We put out this information. We even went to the extent of having parents write down declarations saying, "I know that I'm putting my child's life in danger by preventing vaccination." For around 5 days, we saw a small increase in vaccinations. On the fifth day, they became shameless enough to say, "Yeah, we'll sign it. What's the big deal?" And we had a bunch of declarations signed. Then we made it one level worse, and we said you have to get a signature, and you have to get the signature countersigned by the collector. So they had to sign it, saying, "I'm willing to put my child's life in danger," and then get it countersigned by me. So we had to do all of this stuff simply because there were motivated guys who were creating WhatsApp forwards. And this was for a disease which just a year ago had killed 50,000 people in India alone. So I had made angry videos. So then at this point, we decided that, okay, the parents part is not working out. Why don't we just go to the kids? Because it's the kids who are saying no to vaccination in school. So we went to the kids and we started talking to them and asking them, why is it that you guys are not vaccinating? What's the problem? Is it just because your parents are saying no? And surprisingly, the kids did not say, our parents said no, hence we can't. They basically repeated all of the WhatsApp and Facebook propaganda that we were seeing over the past few weeks. They were saying that vaccines are not effective. They hardly have a prevention rate. You can still get the disease despite being vaccinated. The girl child issue came up again, saying that young girls will not be able to have kids. Interesting thing is it's the exact opposite. If a woman who is carrying was actually affected by rubella, there's a huge possibility of the child developing brain-related diseases. But anyway, so the children repeated all that WhatsApp propaganda. Now these are kids who don't have permanent access to phones, but they were still repeating it all back to us. And we started reasoning with them and started explaining to them that, look, it's like vaccinations like a helmet. And even if you wear the helmet and meet with an accident, there is a possibility that you would get injured. But without the helmet, things would be much worse. If you develop an injury while wearing a helmet, it does not mean you remove it the next time. Once we explained all of these things, we found that wherever we did these classes with kids, and these were just interactions, not even classes really, there we saw an increase in vaccinations. In one particular school, the number went, oh, we also guilt tripped them. We sent them on a guilt trip by saying that your teachers are okay with vaccinating you. Do you think your teachers don't want you to have kids? Your teachers would poison you. They would inject harmful stuff into you. So by talking to them in this vein, we were able to push them towards vaccination. So basically, we found that the kids are all right, and based on that, we started a small program called Satyameva Jayate, where we made a particular a presentation that was basically a study presentation. We trained around 150 teachers to go and talk to kids from standard 8 to standard 12. In this program, we basically explained to them the what, why, how, and what to do with fake news. Basically demystified the social network and all of that. We made them familiar with the social network's business model, clickbaits, filter bubbles, what these concepts are, how they are intended to capitalize on our emotions and our insecurities, etc. 150 teachers were trained, and then 1 lakh students were covered after that. So these are screenshots from some of the slides that we made, trying to break it down very simply, saying, more visitors, more traffic means more money. Every time you click on something you don't know about, unverified, there's every possibility that the person's making money as a consequence. So why do you want to assist that? Gave them examples like this, explain what filter bubbles are, which is more money means comes through more time spent by us on a website. So websites have an incentive not to give you the truth, social media websites, but to give you anything that will make you stay longer. Explain that concept to them, and also gave them specific instructions on how do you react to unverified unattributed information. So if you get a message like this saying tomorrow morning there's going to be an earthquake, and which is why a holiday has been declared, how should you respond to a message like this? So you could respond with a very basic, can you please share the source of the information? Put the burden of the truth on the person who is sending it. That was one of the main thrusts of the program. Always ask the person what's the source. Fact checking comes next. First thing, put the burden on the guy who sent you the information. So then we had examples, around 15, 20 examples, and we also took them through what the actual truth was behind each of the items. So this was the training program for teachers. Those are teachers from different high schools in the district. So Kerala has amazing education infrastructure. So the government has installed smart classrooms in almost every room in every school in the state. So every school you go to, government schools, government aided schools would have a projector, etc. So this made it easier for us to get our message across directly without losing anything in transmission. So you can see that teachers having a discussion on the subject in multiple schools. And surprisingly, this project sort of resonated beyond Kannur. We started as a district level program, but we got so many calls from international agencies who came in and then started and did news stories on it, spent time in the classrooms. So this was a team from China, a team from Japan. BBC's India correspondent came and visited us, stayed there with us for 3 days, visited multiple schools. And so learning from this particular program was classes for kids are extremely effective, because once you break down these things, these subjects to them, they take to it very easily. Much easier to break through to kids than it is to adults. Adults have a certain reverence towards technology. So when something comes through a television set or through technology, they give it much more seriousness. Kids are not that impressed by it. Advantage of being a government-led program was the obvious advantage of credibility. That is, there less suspicion about who is coming to take these classes. Do they have some hidden agenda, etc. There's an unfulfilled appetite for awareness. That's something we realized. How did we realize that? The moment we did the class for the teachers, they went and implemented the entire program across all the schools. There was no problem at all. And this was just a suggestion that we had, that if we could have color codes for different WhatsApp forwards, etc., we could know what is a forward, and also maybe data on who sends most forwards on a group. That would be helpful. Thrust of the program, always intervene with what is the source. You don't need to go beyond that on your first try. And we need to make fake news like socially uncool. Like how smoking was considered an activity which sort of set you apart from a group, and that happened during our lifetime. We saw that happen. We need to bring that sort of a civic sense into people, that someone who's consistently sharing misinformation, verifiably false, demonstrably false misinformation consistently, that person should be it should be made known to the person that this sort of behavior is not welcome. It's not welcome in society. So thank you. That's the presentation. This has been selected as the greatest presentation of both the 21st and 22nd centuries, especially by UNESCO. I'm just going to quickly, in a minute, I'm going to wrap up about the anti-fake news division. So when the rumor started that Tamil Nadu is closing its, Kerala is closing its borders to Tamil Nadu, and we are not going to accept anything coming in from Tamil Nadu, there was a huge surge of panic that went through Kerala, because we depend on Tamil Nadu and neighboring states for a lot of supplies. And the chief minister had to issue multiple clarifications, and as a consequence of that, he directed that an anti-fake news division be started in the state. So we started that. It started in the context of COVID, and we have a team in which there's me, there's a doctor, there's a social media specialist, there is a police representative, and of course we tie up with all different departments, and we've been handling misinformation regarding COVID and related issues for the past, it's been a month and a half now. I'm going to stop with that right now. I'll take questions, and I'll give you more of an idea about what we're doing through those questions. Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Mir. That was a fantastic presentation, and we have a few questions already. My request to you all is I'll call upon you to read your question. First, write down a question in the chat window, and then I'll call upon your name so you can read it out yourselves. I'm going to start with just the latest one. Rashmi Nayak is saying, and I'm going to speak on behalf of Rashmi, I'm actually not going to call her to speak. She says, good morning, Mir. Big fan of the work you've been doing. Her question, she says, you seem to be an outlier. How many batchmates or colleagues of your IAS cadre are doing similar initiatives? Any thoughts on how you can scale this initiative? So, Googly, first up, Mir, for you.
Yeah. So, see, all of us are working on different initiatives based on the challenges that we are getting, right? So, for instance, I had a peculiar challenge regarding misinformation in my district, which is what led to the creation of this program. My batchmates and others, they would be outliers in so many other sectors. So, what is our responsibility as far as this is concerned is that it's our responsibility to sort of face different problems in different places, find out solutions that can then be spread across the state. So I have a certain experience with fake news. So as you can see, because of my work in Kannur regarding fake news, I'm now heading the anti-fake news division. So because of that, I'm able to now reach out, or rather do something even more direct as far as the problem is concerned on a state level. So that's how the system works. Everyone will not start stuff because the sectors are just too many. And it's now the whole fake news thing is something that I have brought to the state level based on my experience. It's been shared with people here. Now we have an anti-fake news division to which we'll be contributing, and try to make anti-fake news and anti-misinformation a greater part of the mainstream. So that's how the system works.
Great. Okay, we'll come back to the second part of the question, Mir, on scaling. I have a feeling there'll be a few more questions on that. But Shankar, I've unmuted you. Do you want to read your question out?
Yeah, Mihir, this was really inspired, mate. It was very interesting for us to look at the perspective. But I want to sort of move this to a different demographic. So research shows that senior citizens are most vulnerable to misinformation. You yourself said that they have a reverence towards the technology. Now, you know, because they also didn't grow up in an online world. So there is a certain digital naivete to their approach towards, you know, believing and trusting these sources. So how would you take up a challenge, say, for example, that what are the resources do we have in India? Do we have, do you think something like digital literacy would be an interesting approach for them? What kind of tools do you actually suggest? Say, for example, it's a personal thing even in my family as well, right? I look towards my parents who are sort of in that demographic, and they become one of those strong sources to pass the information around more than anybody else.
Yeah. Can I get your name again?
Shankar.
Shankar. So, hi Shankar, thanks for your comments and the question. This is an issue that needs to be tackled, but how we go about it, multiple approaches. What we're looking at, one is that, I think teaching kids critical thinking and teaching them to question information that they receive online, that is the foundation of any successful program on a social scale. Teach people to question, teach people to ask questions, whether it's family members, whatever. So during our program, for instance, we tell kids that even if your family members are sharing stuff, please remember you have to stop them when they start doing that, because very soon the kind of misinformation that they will be sharing is going to get more and more severe, and it's going to lead to trouble at some point of time, and the police is going to trace it back to you. We have examples of people who have been arrested, booked in Kerala for forwarding news. So that's one aspect. Now, how do we directly go to old people, right? How do we directly go to senior citizens? See, the solution is sort of there in the question itself, because they are online and they believe stuff that they see online. What we are not seeing, unfortunately, is we don't see a lot of effective campaigning around misinformation. Whenever there's an incident, you will see a few public interest ads that will come up, but we haven't yet come to terms, or rather we haven't yet launched a concerted campaign that also infiltrates all these WhatsApp groups with images, with videos, with sort of like show a mirror to people as to what they're doing. If I have a minute, this is part of one of the things that the anti-fake news division is doing, which is we are producing videos to sort of show a mirror to people when they are mindlessly forwarding stuff. Can I just play that video? It's just a minute long. Okay, so I'm just going to give you context because not everybody probably knows Malayalam. This has subtitles, but there is a forward that is received on a group which says that migrant laborers, or as Kerala has now calls them guest laborers, have now been infected with corona, and they are carriers, and we all need to be careful. So that's the message that's going to come on this group, and you can just see the rest of the video. Just give me 1 second. I just want you to watch this. This is another 1 minute. Anyway, so can we get back?
Yes. I mean,
Yeah. Okay. So the point is,
yes.
Yeah. So the point is that this is just the beginning. We've only just started this stuff, but we need to make more and more stuff. This needs to become part of hopefully enter our entertainment scene. We need more and more videos which sort of shed light on what exactly we're doing while we're trying to be harmless about it. That's something that's not happening at the moment, and that's something all of us, whoever has the capability, needs to push for on a much larger scale.
Actually, what I wanted to say, what we can do in the case when no action is taken against a spreader of fake news, especially when he belongs to ruling party.
Yeah, that's the question.
Right. See, as far as fake news is concerned, as far as its spread is concerned, it is a crime like any other, especially when it leads to mass panic, etc. It's like properly classified under IPC 505 and this thing. So you have to treat it as any other crime, in the sense that whenever there is, if you know somebody personally who's doing it, or if you're personally aware, like how any crime has to have, has a complainant, and then there's a police investigation that follows. That process will have to be followed by any citizen. Now, from a government perspective, when we get information like this, we directly forward it to the police. And what we have found so far is that the police starts acting on it, but then they take some time to get the information about the person's particulars from the social media website as well. So if you feel that your government, the police is not acting on something, as a free citizen, you should talk about it. You should put your voice out, obviously. But from the inside, from inside the government, what my experience has been so far, limited in the past month and a half, is that we have actually taken action against cases where people have spread fake news in the context of COVID. And in some cases where action is still pending, it is because we have communicated with the big social media websites, and we're waiting for details from them.
My question is, actually you are spreading a lot of awareness to schools, particularly the teachers and the students, for tackling the fake news. That is a great effort. But I just wanted to ask that whether are you contacting the social media platforms directly so that they can take some measures on their own, for example, decoloring or disfiguring or isolating the person who has posted the fake news, or maybe closing their accounts when their limit extends to 3 or 4, whatever you decide. So is there anything of such form in the pipeline?
Yeah, thank you for your question. See, so far what's happening, our experience is that when there are two things that happen. One, when the government actually calls out somebody for doing spreading fake news. Like, we've had cases where we've gone and commented on specific videos and said that what you're doing is actually wrong. And we've had multiple instances of information being deleted and taken down. For example, there was one case which said that Zamzam water solves corona. So we left a comment over there, and that post was taken down immediately. So that is one thing that's happening. So when governments intervene, there is a palpable fear among people, especially among those people who are not deliberately spreading it, who are spreading it out of a sense of responsibility. So that's one thing that happens. As far as social media sites are concerned, we, like I said, multiple cases that we've received so far, we have referred it to them. They do take stuff down. During this COVID thing, what has happened is how it has affected and slowed down every other sector. Also, big social media platforms have also faced the same problem. So if they were, so what we understood is if the turnaround time for a request was, say, 3 days previously, now it has gone up to like 10 days, 15 days in some instance before the platform actually takes it down. As far as special coding and special actions are concerned, see, we have communicated with them on multiple conferences, and it's up to them really to take it up. But one thing I want to stress here is that, see, this is not a platform related problem alone. The larger chunk, fake news is there everywhere, right? How badly it affects society comes down to us as a society, and how much importance we give to concepts like critical thinking, questioning authority, stuff like that. So even if the social media platforms did everything that we want them to do, this problem is not going to go away until society gets its game right.
Hi, Mir. Good to hear you speak. I want to check this measles rubella controversy or the misinformation around it. Yeah. Was it targeted towards a specific community? Because even in our own stories, which we did later on, we did find that a central minister's statement was, an irresponsible statement was misread by a lot of people down in the south. And that led to, the fact that the vaccine will make you impotent and that you will not have children and all of that. So was this directed towards a particular community? And pardon me for being very candid on it. Was it directed towards the Muslim community? Or did you find that parents across communities came and said, that they don't want their children to be vaccinated? Thank you.
Okay. So when this thing unfolded, there were multiple rumors coming from multiple sides. So I'll tell you. So one side was the whole, was the Ayurveda, the Ayush section, which said that, vaccinations are completely harmful. So another section that came out very forcefully was homeopathy doctors who said that this should not be done. So that was one section. Then there was certain content that was put out there by people from the minority community, saying that this particular thing threatens them the most, that it is specifically targeted to threaten them. That was one of the forwards that was going around. But when we spoke to people, when we talked to people, one of the main problems that they had was not so much about it affecting only their community specifically. There were takers for that sort of stuff as well. But the larger concern, even among, we obviously went to areas where there was a very high incidence of, where there was a high minority population, etc. The general thing was the health problem. That was what they were most concerned about. Yes, there was propaganda about the specific communities being targeted and that sort of stuff. But when we spoke to people, the thing we got is, yes, we've heard this, but our larger concern is the long-term health consequences.
Mr. Mir, my question is basically regarding this news items, fake news items, which are non-COVID-19 or non-political or non-religion related. Are these also reportable to the police? Do they take any action, or do they have the time and energy to even look at these, in view of so many other complaints that they must be receiving? How do we tackle it?
Thanks so much, sir, for that question. See, this is exactly why I was saying, to the previous questioner, that we need to tackle this only at a societal level, because we need to understand that each case, once an FIR is registered in one case, the investigation has to start. It turns up on the police register, which means resources have to be given to it. So for every forward out there, if the police started doing this, that's the only thing they'll end up doing, which is why the police would obviously classify, if we report 10 pieces of fake information to them, they will classify it on the basis of what has the most severe public impact. So for example, IPC 505 says anyone who spreads information that leads to mass panic among the population. So they would judge it on those grounds first. As far as the other stuff, there are 2-3 other things. I'll just give you 1 or 2 examples of the stuff that comes in through COVID, which we didn't anticipate. Now, obviously, COVID has come in, the lockdown has come in, schools have shut, and this has come during exam time. So now there is a huge information vacuum around when are the exams? Are they going to be conducted? Are they going to be online? Are they going to be offline? What happens if they don't get conducted at all? Are careers ruined forever? So there are all these questions. And in that question, in that space comes so many people who can get hits and likes and subscribers. So one guy, he came there and he gave a 6-minute speech on an exam schedule that was never announced by the government. And he was so confident that when I asked my own batchmate who is in charge of education here, I asked him, are you sure this guy is lying? And he said, dude, I run the department. What are you asking me? Because I can't imagine someone just making all this up. So this again, see, something that we didn't expect but can create panic. Another one is regarding migrant labor. Trains are starting tomorrow. Forward goes out. People start coming up. So these sort of things are serious. They have physical real world consequences, which are almost immediate in nature. So the police will obviously give priority to that. One thing we should understand as citizens is, I don't think the police is going to be able to satisfy our want for shooting down every piece of misinformation that is there online. They will never be able to satisfy all of us. So we need to do that. We need to make more campaigns. We need to put more videos out there, and we need to make these videos more engaging, more entertaining, so that they don't look like someone's preaching. It needs to happen in a huge way in vernacular languages, and it needs to be consistent. Fake news is consistent. Past 3 years, we haven't seen it stop. But if you look at the response to it, it's like a bunch of incidents happen, so there's a spike in awareness related posts out there. Then another bunch of incidents happen, then another spike. That cannot be the case. We have to compete with the speed of fake news. That sort of thing only we can do. You can record messages, I can record messages. Just make it commonplace. This behavior is unacceptable. It won't get you a job tomorrow. If a company looks at your resume, if a company instead of your resume looks at your Facebook profile, it may not get you it may mar your marriage prospects if you come across as an absolute idiot who does this. We need to sort of really make this thing unpopular, and that's something the police cannot do for us.
I said that the pandemic has pushed many children online. So are you seeing a surge in misinformation and kids being impacted by it? And then how do we tackle it?
The best example of kids being impacted is the exam schedule misinformation that I gave you. Apart from that, we had around 2-3 instances in which we saw kids sharing misinformation on Corona enthusiastically, in which case, again, you have to we can't obviously go ahead and charge the kids and do all of that. So we have to go after the source to the extent possible. Another thing we're working on at the moment is that there are a lot of discussions happening in the government right now on how we can bring this awareness to kids across the whole state. Right. So this is something that we implemented in Kannur, but we obviously want to make it scale it up in a big way. COVID is creating those problems for us right now because we don't have classrooms, we don't have kids. It's a kind of class that is best taken in person. So there are preliminary deliberations happening in government, and hopefully we'll have a solution to that soon.
Hi Amir, thank you so much for the presentation and all the work that you've been doing. So I basically want to ask, Kerala has a sort of a trust-based mechanism in the government, but when we come to public health misinformation and action hesitancy, not every state fares the same way. So how do you tackle the misinformation as well as balancing trust issues together? And secondly, during Nipah, what was the situation like about misinformation? If you could just highlight upon that. Thank you.
Thanks so much for your question. As far as public health and even on the public health front in Kerala, the health department has made a separate wing for identifying any sort of misinformation regarding COVID. There's a district level cell in every district, which was constituted only to respond to COVID related stuff. In fact, many of the alleged fake news items that we verify it through those district level cells. So please remember that even though Kerala has a high level of public trust, it also has the highest amount of internet penetration and the highest amount of literacy. So there are people competing to push out pieces of fake information all the time. And it is a case of vigilance that Kerala has been particularly vigilant on that front as well with dedicated teams. It's not happening on its own. Another thing about Kerala is that Kerala is actually, if you look, is almost like India's land of Ayurveda. When people think Ayurveda, Ayurvedic treatments, etc., Kerala is the place to go. So we have a very strong, non-allopathic voice also on all medical subjects. So that's not something that just comes down to public trust, and the government has to put that point across forcefully to ensure that the right side of the argument is seen by the people. Secondly, thank you for asking about Nipah, because Kannur is a neighboring district to the district which was severely affected by Nipah, which was Calicut. And in Kannur, we also had like a bunch of rumors to deal with. It was the first time, I would say that it was the first time that I saw in the evolution of fake news where government authorities' signatures and seals were taken from an actual press release and then pasted on a blank document with their own text. So for example, if they issued a warning saying we don't want people to gather in these places, etc., they said chicken also causes Nipah. It's not just confined to bats, so stop eating poultry. And with the sign and seal of the district medical officer of Calicut. So that was the first time we saw that, and that really alerted us to the risks of putting out official seals and signatures online, because it's prone to immediate misuse. And I'll tell you how I faced that problem specifically, because we were testing people for Nipah virus. The Nipah virus results the samples used to go to Manipal, and then we used to get a report from Manipal. So there was a rumor that 3 or 4 people in Kannur had contracted the Nipah virus, and we took the samples to Manipal. As soon as the results came from Manipal, there was this big discussion in my office saying, okay, let's put this stuff out right now. And immediately it hit me at that point of time saying, don't ever put out that format in which they declare somebody positive or negative, because the next thing you know, me, the minister and the SP our names will be on it saying these guys have been declared Nipah positive. So that was, these were all the starting points, where we were just coming to terms with what was happening around us. Nipah was one of the major contributors to this Satyameva Jayate program, because that was also a major problem.
Scribbler_ has asked me to read his question out. Just looking for it. So he says, fake news earlier was spread on issues we could laugh off, like a 3-headed snake or something. But now it's being conducted in a very organized manner, and it has underlying propaganda. IT cells are extensively manufacturing news. TV media is also spreading fake news. As civilians, we can ask for source, go to fact check, but shouldn't the government's response be on a larger scale? Shouldn't the government curb it where it's created?
And thanks for that question. I think this is a problem that all of us are having to deal with. Now, see, my understanding of misinformation is that there are people who are dedicated to making this stuff and then putting it out there, right? There are going to be people, and that there are those people on one side, and then there are those people who spread it for 2 reasons. One, because they think it's harmless, or they think everybody else should know, or because it appeals to their insecurities, fears, or whatever makes them happy. This thing. So there are these 2 constituencies which are there, and these 2 constituencies are going to be there in any country. Now, how receptive the public is, how receptive the general public is, who don't have a hidden agenda, right? How receptive they are to accepting this stuff and sending it out really decides how strong the manufacturing base of fake news is. Now, if we are in a situation where people are mindlessly forwarding stuff, they don't question, they don't ask for sources, they never create a conversation around this subject. If that's where we are, then yes, there's going to be that means there's a huge demand for fake information, and obviously there's going to be a boom in the fake news manufacturing sector, which is what I think we are seeing. Now, the more we get out there and ask, we may say that, we ask for sources, etc., but ask yourself this question. We don't do it as often as we should, because you all know that if we keep asking this stuff, we come across as that party pooper. Now, this happens to me on so many WhatsApp groups that I am on. And for me, I look at it like I'm being paid to do this stuff, right? To ask what is the source. I mean, that's the least that I can do. But when I keep doing that over and over again for every post that comes up, it's almost like everyone saying, okay, let's wait for him to react, sort of thing. So I'm saying, as much as we would like to think that a lot of that is happening, it's not happening. And making people believe fake news, making people believe propaganda is not a 1 month, 2 month project, right? It's been happening for a long period of time now. So there is no easy solution to it. So as far as WhatsApp and all is concerned, we can't find who made it. And even if you found out who made it, you could restrict someone from you could restrict one person from making fake news. But we have got so many people who spread fake news, who forwarded it. What makes that forward message powerful is people who spread it. So many people have been caught, so many people have been arrested, but you would not have seen like an immediate drop in the power of misinformation. So which only goes to say that we need to really strengthen systems. Now, obviously this is difficult. This involves talking to your leaders. It involves talking to society level organizations. It requires us to get out of the screen. The fake news problem is not being made only online, right? There are people offline who are making it. So if you want to solve that problem, outraging about it online is not going to help. You also have to get out there and talk about it. And anyone can ask yourself, I mean, nobody would genuinely say that, yes, that sort of awareness campaign is happening. It has to be a citizen-led effort also, because the more pressure citizens put on this, the more citizens write about this, the more citizens reach out to public officials about it, the more that happens, there will be pressure to act. I'll just say one quick thing about my own experience in government. Now, when you're working as, say, the district collector of a place or the SP of a place, a person not staying in the district and a person who is not aware of issues in the district and comes across one particular issue in that district can look at the administration and say, hey, there's this problem in your district. Why aren't you guys doing anything about it? It's perfectly possible that nobody in that district has raised a question about it. Now, time is limited, and the kind of attention that administrators, leaders give to issues depends a lot on how much the public is raising an issue about that particular topic. There are so many times when a small issue comes up, we don't react because we have other things to do, and then we realize that that issue is not dying down. That people are still talking about it. And at that point of time, there will be someone who walks and says, sir, that particular issue over there, it's really attracting attention. We need to intervene at this particular point of time. Right? So we should do what we can. And when we do what we can, governments will react the way that you want them to react. That's something that will happen. I can say with certainty that that sort of pressure offline is not happening. It's mostly online. We log into our Twitter screens and all of that and talk about it a bit. But are we putting that effort offline? The problem is created offline. Online is just a manifestation of it.
So I wanted to ask that often what happens when you try to fact check your entire family WhatsApp groups is that, you keep on running into the same issues, and, these are political beliefs, health beliefs that often don't change, Like I know that during the pandemic, my parents had heavy reliance on Ayurvedic and homeopathy systems while I was busy following what scientists were saying. So what do you suggest, how can we tackle this entirely different set of beliefs and bring everybody into the fact, into, finding out facts before they forward something?
See, this is the interesting thing. This is the interesting part and the complicated part of the problem. It's that how do we create this universal protocol, which everybody will somehow respond to. And that's very difficult to do. Now, each person, based on the strength of what they believe in, based on how much they must have benefited from this at some point of time, right? So it's a little complicated because I have personally benefited from Ayurveda in a certain aspect of my life. Now, there may be another aspect where Ayurveda does not cure something and allopathy is the only way out. That's also possible. So balancing these two things becomes a little difficult, which is where what you're talking about is complex territory. Now, in this particular case, if you feel that your parents are sharing a certain set of beliefs, you can talk to them and see, because it's family, right? You can't expect, not that you are expecting, I'm just saying that as far as issues within the family are concerned, you're going to have to talk about things to them, find out where their beliefs are coming from, what led them to that particular belief. And there will be each person has certain points at which, if you strike at that particular point, they're more likely to have a change of heart. One way of looking at it could be, okay, somebody who followed bad medical advice, these are the consequences that were there. Another thing is showing them or telling them that, see, doing this can actually harm someone, an immediate family member. It could actually cause harm to somebody immediately in the family. Now, each person, like I have my own way of talking to my parents. I know that what works, what doesn't, and things. So similarly, you need to find that out and have a larger conversation. You should not look at this in terms of a few messages that's going to change a lifetime of training. It's going to be a longer conversation. We need to understand that our parents, or even for our children, us, we have come to these views. Whatever we are talking right now, we have come here based on years of training, right? And subconscious training. That's how you arrived at your views today. And you haven't become a fact-conscious person overnight by reading one article or watching one video, etc. So that's something that we need to internalize and understand that, yeah, it's out there. Let's not take super offense at it. It's after all our own families. And there are different degrees of misinformation that people can spread. So start off with the less harmful, rather the stuff that they are not so fanatical about. Start off with that, and then slowly make your way up. And maybe you will also have to change your mind at some point of time, in this interaction. So be prepared for that. I think that's the best way of handling things. That's my advice.
My question was about how making memes and funny graphics where you debunk fake news or call something fake is that more relatable to audiences across age groups? And how can this be done taking into the several cultures that we have and the religious aspects of it without basically not making fun or insulting somebody?
Yeah, see, this is something that we have already started working on. We have made some content in Malayalam through memes. Like Malayalam, in Kerala, people are big on memes, and memes are a great way to communicate. And like I said, we try to show the mirror to people as much as possible. I'll give you an example of a meme that we made. So there is a guy, he meets another guy and he says, "Hey man, thank you so much, for helping me out during this crisis." And that guy's like, what do you mean I helped you out in this crisis? He said, no, I had so many stocks left in my bakery, so I made this message saying that brown bread solves corona and all of that. Nobody shared it except you. You shared it all over the neighborhood, and now my stocks have gone. I mean, you are better than the guys that I pay to work for me. And then this guy just has this blank look on his face, saying, what have I done? So then we made that meme and said, send this to all those people who think they're helping others. Now, stuff like that, which sort of shows a mirror. See, I'll tell you one more thing. You don't have to make a meme on that particular piece of information only. This is a larger, the particular news that someone shares and the kind of fake news that they relate to is part of their larger uncritical worldview, right? Because they have this uncritical way of looking at things. That's where the problem stems. So they'll believe anything. They also believe strongly in not questioning themselves. That if you believe something, it's okay to get information from the internet and then send it out. That's also an issue. They don't believe in verifying everything. So these things are there. So it's better for us to try and make content which sort of nudges people towards questioning stuff. And even if you don't have to always address the subject directly, I'll give you an example. We all know that political fake news is a major issue, right? That's where that's the main battleground of fake news. But obviously, if a government started doing classes on political fake news, it would crash and burn in no time, because there would be allegations of bias, and there would be bias based on the people that were at the helm. So that's why, even if there is a major problem, if you can handle it and if you can approach it from another perspective by talking about similar situations but not directly hitting at the problem, that's also an effective way of doing about it. Because another thing you must have realized, and even I know, is that when you go heads on, like when you like a battering ram, when we just go and start hitting at a particular problem, people get more and more resistant. So it's important for us to question the larger culture. So we need to understand that misinformation is everywhere, but there are different paths, different countries react differently to misinformation. Inside a country, there are different parts of the country that react differently to the same misinformation, right? So since that is the reality that we live in, it would really help if we could make content, memes, in vernacular languages. That's the good way of reaching out to a larger section of the public, which nudge people towards critical inquiry, asking questions. Don't be made a fool of. Don't become someone's like free laborer. Why are you laboring for some crook, unnecessarily? And if we can reach out to all those people, the guys who are sort of part of this enterprise, not out of a very strong sense of agenda, but just casually, if we can reach out to them, we can really reduce the impact of fake news, and that will in turn affect the creation of misinformation.
Nirmala Nair has asked us, Boom actually, if we could share existing networks that are working with citizens on curbing fake news. We have a great picture of what is happening in Kerala, but what is happening beyond the state would be very helpful. Rashmi's message is acknowledged, but she says it would be great if there are more such networks one could access. This is certainly, Nirmala, this is certainly one of the areas we should be working on in the future. I'm going to hand it over to Govind. Govind had, I think, a couple of questions and maybe a remark or two to make. Govind?
No, I mean, the questions were actually long ones. I don't know if we have time to do that. But essentially, I was asking about, how do you embed this in pedagogy? And, does this have to be continuous learning? Is it a once-a-week intervention in a school? Any thoughts there? That was really it. I don't know if you have the time to answer, but if you
I have some time. I've set aside some time, so if you feel free to. Okay, so first question. This is one of the things that did come to mind, but we do understand that when we made inquiries, and I know because I've worked whatever little bit with exposure to education, changing pedagogy on a government scale, very difficult. Want to get that done through private schools, etc., it's slightly easier. So we can, considering we're starting from a big zero, it's better if we start off with regular workshops. And the workshops need not they need not be weekly. They could be even like once every 3 months. And every 3 months we could give exercises to kids saying, okay, here is information. Why don't you try and fact check it? Do some sort of live demonstrations as to how it's possible. It's very difficult, for people to even think about fact checking. Like for us, it comes as second nature, right? You get something, you go to Google and you just type it in. That's not how people look at it. That's why people forward it. Like I have so many family members who send me messages and tell me that, hey, is this true? And I've sort of become tired of telling them, just Google it, man. It's right there. So we can start off with workshops. We can start off with demonstrations, giving exercises to kids, and working on a pedagogical change is something that I think if people can come together and present something of value to the government, it would be great. So if we could take a syllabus, if you could take the syllabus of a particular subject and then or take a particular chapter, and if we could come up with a way in which we could embed critical thinking into learning of that particular chapter, which is what I understand Finland is already done. If we could do that and do proper demonstrations, it will be taken up by the government. This is one thing that I would like to share with all of you over here. Obviously, there's always this wall between the government and citizens. Targeted approaches made to the government will yield fruit. Okay, I've been at the other end. I've seen that. General appeals to government will have lesser efficacy. So if you have something that you can pass on to the government, to particular officials working in particular sectors, and you are not desperate to take credit for like every piece of ink or every word that you've typed, and you don't, if that's not something that is a stalling point for you, then yes, governments will listen. So Govind, pedagogical change is really the end result, but we should, I think, at least start off with workshops that happen. I think maybe Boom can develop a quiz, based on up-to-date quiz where we can just give that link to people can just log in and go through this particular process saying, okay, do you think this is true or false? True, false, whatever. You get this sort of message. How would you react? You would forward it. You would this. You would do that. Sort of, we could probably work on something like that just to get people talking about it.
Right. Thank you so much. We do have a quiz that we are doing. Not as frequently as we want, but every other week or so, and it's on our website. So we'll share that with everyone.
Sure.
Great. Thanks so much, Mir. One maybe last comment to Jency. Jency?
How to take this to probably the masses. And I also saw a question by Nirmala, if I'm not mistaken, where she talked about what are the resources. I think at the level of Boom, what we are doing is we are trying to do stories, debunk them, and push it out through various platforms that we have. But one key element of the work that we are doing is also working with schools. And, we've done actually more than 3,000 students across Bombay. So that's one way we are trying to reach out, because when you reach out to the children, you're able to reach out to the adults. So that's how we're trying to take it forward, and we will, be in touch with you at some other time.
Okay, thank you so much. Mir, any last words?
Thanks a lot, Venkatesh and everybody at Boom for this opportunity. It was great answering all these questions. And just one thing I want to tell everybody who's listening in is that I know the whole scenario seems hopeless, and it seems like, there is really no light. There's a lot of light at the end of the tunnel, but for that you need to reach the end of the tunnel. So if we make targeted approaches, and if we give resources if we can put our minds together, come up with resources that can easily be utilized by the government, which is catered in the simplest language, in vernacular, etc., we would make a lot of progress. When you give the responsibility to a government to develop pedagogical content and make huge breaks from the past, it takes a lot of time. And one thing governments don't have usually is consistent periods of time. So one person's in a particular post, that person changes, another person starts something, then something else happens. While everyone's working on something, COVID comes in. Once you recover from COVID, I hope this doesn't happen, but Kerala will may have a flood again. We've been having one for the past 2 weeks. So that's why the private citizens can come together, make stuff, make content, have consultations with government officers who will give you the sort of insider view of things. And there are enough people out there. And even if you feel they're not there, if you reach out to them, earnestly, you will get a response. You will be able to develop a relationship and push out a lot of things on a massive scale that right now just reside in your mind.